Program and numerology and how it relates to all of this stuff, I guess, brings us back to this sort of your Protestantism is, you have your own very particular approach to reading the Bible. And I think we've talked a little bit about KJV onlyism, which is to say, the King James Version is the version. And I'm wondering, does that relate directly to the numerology approach that you use, and is, what's going on there?
Yes, I think for 100% that's true. Like, okay, because the crucial example actually doesn't come from the KJV, but we can take it back to the KJV. So the question is, like, what do you even mean by inspired scripture? What kind of test would you do, or what on earth would lead you to that notion that there was such a thing? And overwhelmingly the most powerful example of this, and again, I talked to your other side about this, but I think it bears repeating because I think it's like very, very crucial. So the CCIU's Cabalistic cipher is called alphanumeric or Anglosic Kabbalah, AQ. And all these ciphers, there's a big, I'm very encouraged by the amount of Kabbalistic culture that is happening. And it's especially, I'm very grateful to this particular band of guys. I don't know much about them. I just know them through their website. It's called Ciphers News, spelt with a Y. I think everyone should always have this up in their tabs, frankly. And it's like, it's a basis of a kind of form of discussion, not only between people, but between all intelligent forces in the universe, basically, kind of.
Did you say it's cipher.news?
It's ciphers, CYPHERS .NEWS.
Okay.
Utterly crucial website.
Yeah, because there's one that is cipher.news and there's one that is ciphers.news.
I think it's with an S.
Okay.
It's with an S.
Got it.
If you open it up and then click on ciphers, you should get some
it's like the Matrix.
You see should.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay, we got it.
Okay, and you can see there's lots of interesting ciphers. Again, to just repeat stuff I've said elsewhere, like I used to be very dogmatically supportive of alphanumeric Kabbalah. I think there's a lot now, and my position on this is that any potential channel of communication is an actual channel of communication. So I think if you could have communication through this channel, it's happening. If you want it to, just trust it. Like, you just feel whatever you like to do, because there's a lot more intelligence out there than there is in here. So if you can deal with it, they can deal with it. So we've got alphanumeric Kabbalah, and to try and race through this very fast, if you do sentences, phrases that add up to 666, the number of the beast, that's the 36th triangle. It's a really important number. Obviously, we know it biblically from the book of Revelation. People are a bit freaked out about it, but it's a very important number, and it's like interesting. And sentences, phrases, whatever, lines, poetic lines, adding to that value, tend disproportionately to comply with the basic metric scheme of English epic verse, which is iambic pentameter. So if you have a line in iambic pentameter in English, it's likely to be close to 666 in alphanumeric Kabbalah and AQ. So I was having a chat with people on X and saying, look, pushing this idea, call it beast pulse. It's this thing that actually the esoteric, the occult, basic kind of rhythm, underlying rhythm of the English poetic tradition actually is things that are 666 AQ. So I said, this is like, this is my hypothesis here. And like what Milton, our great epic poet, like I'm assuming like a disproportionate number of his lines will actually be 666. Within 2 minutes, someone's back saying, do you know the very first line of Paradise Lost, of man's first disobedience and the fruit, is 666 AQ? Now, I build my cathedral on this ground, like that's like for me, this is the fundamental thing. What do you make of that? That's like for me everything. Okay, and it's like if I'm talking about inspiration, that's what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go back into the Bible, and I'm going to say, surely, the lofty powers are going to take biblical scripture seriously as they take Miltonic epic poetry. And so we get, for instance, in the KJV, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, 666. Or I'm worried that I'm gonna slightly misquote it. It's Genesis 3, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, 777. And I look at these other translations and they don't do that. I mean, they're just like, I'm in theory open to persuasion. Someone could like try and find the Cabalistic riches of these other English translations of the Bible and persuade me that, I'm wrong and that actually the KJV isn't it. But to me, overwhelmingly, it looks like that there is just endorsement by higher powers of this particular English text that goes, this stuff obviously wasn't deliberately put in by humans. It's like, it stretches coincidence as far as I'm concerned. It's like, seems to me extremely weird that you would have such beautiful Kabbalistic outcome, just as a matter of chance. So when I say KJV only, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I trust that this English text has been providentially composed, and that when we're dealing with it, we're not dealing with just human writers, whether they're ancient Hebrews or modern English translators of the Hebrew. We're dealing with something much bigger than that.
Now, the idea that English itself is working at the pulse of the beast, that's quite a claim, or a sort of hunch that you're working with. And I kind of want to dig a little deeper into that. So in particular, wouldn't that then make some sort of a case from a sort of Eastern Orthodox position that the translation of the Bible into English is indeed like a sort of satanic innovation, right? And that's even the pulse of capital itself, right?
Yeah. I mean, actually, Dave, this is such a good question. And again, it's like just I think I want people to really be serious about it. I want to be serious about it. And so if you ask that question, then you say, well, what is Luciferic rebellion? What really is happening there? If you have a deep sense of divine providence, like we've said, Protestantism, atheism, you can't just say about these things they're accidents. You can't just say they're not supposed to happen. You can't just say it would have been better if they didn't happen. They're providential episodes, problematic providential episodes. And we just have to take that all the way back. When you take it all the way back, you obviously are going back to Luciferic revolt. And I think even like Milton, obviously, it's the book on this, and it's of course has to be in English, and it has to be illustrated by Gustave Doré and all of these other things, and it has to be that its first line is 666 in alphanumeric Kabbalah, but even Milton, in a certain sense, I think finds it hard to stick to the real issue because when he's on the fall, when he's on Adam and Eve, I think he gets it, in a deep, what I would say, deep Christianity, that you can't just say this is a mistake. This is what history comes out of, This is history. So you're going to say the whole of history is a mistake? Of course that has to happen. Of course the fall has to happen. It doesn't make any sense to think that that's a problem or that God's going to be surprised by the fall. Like, oh, I created Adam and Eve and the fuck is messed up. I mean, that's not real, surely. But you have to take it all the way back to Lucifer and say, is that a mistake? Is it that God trusted the guy, but he was betrayed? I mean, it would have been better if Lucifer had just not done that, if Lucifer had just remained like unproblematic. And I think this is our question. This is the real question posed by our religious tradition. And there's obviously like two poles that, as to my mind, are completely unsatisfactory. There's a kind of quasi pseudo-orthodox shallow pole that is just, it would have been better if none of this bad stuff had happened. And there's a kind of idiot, gonzo, satanic punk pole, which is that, yay, go Satan. Like, I mean, I don't know what more. I'm hoping that is obviously ridiculous, but probably there are people who are still like confused by it.
I can think of a couple people, yeah.
But obviously, it seems to me obvious that those are unsatisfactory. I mean, it's like, no, it's like, it's not only that theologically is the most interesting problem and the most interesting question, but our literature, the Western literary canon, is totally trying to grasp what's going on there. And the whole thing in Faust, I am Mephistopheles, I am that spirit that wants to do ill but only does good. Which is to say, just like we were talking about the invisible hand, in biology, no animal wants to produce a thriving ecosystem. No business wants to produce a thriving, distributed, competitive market economy. Mephistopheles doesn't want to produce whatever it is that Providence wants to produce. We can just accept that. But that doesn't mean that Luciferic experiment was even remotely avoidable, was even in any way not part of what had to happen, what the actual profound religious story of our culture really is about. So that's my long-winded answer to this, I think, excellent question about that. And I think that, yes, the KJV Bible, 1611 Bible, is part of that.
Mm.